What's up, everybody? JJ Buckets here, and welcome to the third episode of Raptors Roundtable. Now, if you're on my channel, you know who I am, and hopefully you know our guest today, but even if you don't, I'm going to let them introduce themselves.
What's up, guys? You know who this is, the Waraich Report.
Clutch takes. Let's go.
And we have a bunch of fun topics here today. Now, for the first one, let me tell you, we are going to talk like bitter ex-girlfriends because we are going to question whether or not Kawhi Leonard leaving the Raptors was a mistake. Thank you, Dallas Mavericks, for giving us this nice little rambling point. Shout out Luka Doncic. Past that, to continue with the playoff talk, obviously, because the Raptors aren't in the playoffs this year, we're all going to personally talk about which teams we're kind of supporting, throughout this playoff period, who we want to see win and for what reasons. And then lastly, we have a nice little debate for you at the end where we are going to talk about the best teams to never win a title. The best part is, as opposed to the last couple of debates that we had, this one, we obviously are each bringing somebody to the table, which makes it a little more interesting because everybody's fighting for their own man. Excuse me, folks. And for their own team. So that's going to be really fun. I hope you stick around. But before we hop into this video, just do us a favor, guys, hit that like button. It helps the video reach a bigger audience and it's super appreciated by everybody here. And if you want to keep up to date with the Raptors Roundtable, subscribe to everybody here, visit the channel, smash that button. These videos get rotated between our channels. So I believe the next one is going to be on the Waraich Report. So keep an eye out for that. Now, with all that being said, the first topic of the day. So the Clippers are a mess. For the second straight year, it seems like they are going to be underachieving in the playoffs. They're down 2-0 to the Mavericks. And the crazy part is both those games have been in LA. So looking at this situation, and obviously being Raptors fans, it's so tempting to just sit here and think, Kawhi Leonard made a mistake. Do you think that's the case, Waraich?
Absolutely. I mean, I have been loving this series because let's talk about the fact that it's been a really competitive series. It's not just the fact that Luka Doncic has been going off. It's really exciting as fans to see a really competitive series. They're both going at each other, but also because we talked with this whole last couple seasons, we've talked about how great the Clippers defense is, yet they can't stop one guy with some really nice role players. I mean, besides maybe Kristaps Porzingis, but what Luka Doncic is doing here is just absolutely amazing. And as a Raptors fan, I am just kicking my feet up and I am loving this because, I mean, let's be honest, who doesn't want to see the Clippers lose, especially as a Raptors fan? And yes, we're bitter exes, as you said, but I'm loving this. I'm really enjoying this. It's a competitive series, and I want to see the Clippers out in the first round. Dan, I'm going to pass it on to you. What do you think?
Kawhi 100% made a mistake. The Raptors gave him everything. They gave him Kawhi and dine. He said, nah, I'm forgetting championships. I'm leaving all this behind. I want to live in LA, period. Obviously, it has not worked out. I felt when they brought in Rajon Rondo, I thought that would help a little bit, as I thought they had too many individuals on their team. I thought Rondo would bring the team together like he did with the Lakers. Obviously, they had LeBron too, but I mean, like, a player like Kyle Lowry would have been so great for them. Obviously, they had like zero assets. But yeah, now that they're down to the Mavericks, Kawhi's got to be questioning himself, as he didn't only go to LA just to be home. He went there to win championships, as he wouldn't go there without Paul George. And obviously, that combination has not worked. So I think Kawhi really has to question his decision-making, as I personally believe that the Raptors, if he stayed with them, we definitely would have had another at least few-year window to go back to the finals and win another one.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree. Here's the thing. You talked about the championship window. First of all, for my money's worth, and I'm sorry, but you could not convince me otherwise, as hard as you could try, the Raptors would have absolutely repeated last year with Kawhi at the helm. Don't get me wrong, that Lakers team that won the championship last year was a good team. Nobody's going to question that. But with the state of the Eastern Conference last year, first of all, you can't convince me that they wouldn't have just marched straight through the East and did their damage again. And then in the finals, yes, that team had LeBron, Anthony Davis, but the Raptors that season, even without Kawhi were so good at limiting top options of opposing teams. I think they could have done it. And I know playoff LeBron is a different animal, but I think they could have given so much attention to LeBron that it would have at least made him uncomfortable. And with all due respect to Anthony Davis, as much as I do love him as a player, I don't think him as the focal point would have been enough for that Lakers team. And they did have some decent role players, but at the same time, I don't think it would have been enough to knock off what would have been a really deep Raptors team. And here's my thing in terms of whether or not did Kawhi make a mistake? If we're talking in terms of basketball and just winning,
100%.
yes, absolutely. Because I think the Raptors are so much better constructed of a roster than the Clippers have. The Clippers, I don't even take as much issue with Paul George, although last year's playoff run was disgusting. Pandemic P, Jesus Christ. Just the guys that they have past that aren't really great fits around those two guys. Like, where is your, you were talking about it, Dan, like a guy like Kyle Lowry, that is a guy that would be phenomenal with that roster because that team desperately needs a playmaker to unlock its full potential. And like Rajon Rondo has been good, but he hasn't quite been there. For the most part, just the role players on the Clippers are lacking. And I think he absolutely would have had that in Toronto. Frankly, in Toronto, he really did have a perfect situation. And for anybody that's going to come into the comment section, because I can already hear it being like, oh yeah, well look, the Raptors aren't a playoff team this year. They've fallen off. You don't think that the roster construction wouldn't have been different if Kawhi was here? The Raptors would have absolutely been more aggressive to constantly surround Kawhi with the right pieces and the right talent because that's who Masai is. And Masai wants to be a winner. The only reason that I guess he took this kind of cautious approach this year in this past free agency was because he was anticipating a huge free agency class this year, particularly Giannis, which he's obviously not going to have anymore. But the case here being that I really do think this roster would have looked completely different. There would have been more of an effort to re-sign Serge Ibaka and obviously Marc Gasol if that was working, if they did end up repeating, or frankly, retool with better pieces that still fit around Kawhi Leonard. And again, as much as somebody like Paul George as much as somebody like Paul George is more talented probably than a Kyle Lowry really is the perfect complement to Kawhi Leonard because he does a lot of the things that Kawhi is deficient at, which aren't a lot. But like, let me tell you, Kyle Lowry's playmaking, beside Kawhi Leonard is invaluable. And frankly, Pascal Siakam catches so much hate from Raptors fans in terms of not being the good enough number one option, but he was such a good Robin during that championship run to Kawhi. He would have been even better. Give him 2 extra years, even 1 extra year of growth beside Kawhi, with Kawhi drawing most of the defensive pressure and say the version of Pascal that we even see now. Oh my goodness, this version of Pascal would have been absolutely doing damage beside Kawhi Leonard. Frankly, you could easily make an argument that he would have been doing more damage than, dare I say, Paul George is doing now. Sorry, I know that was a lot, but yeah.
No, I agree. Also, on a side note, I do want to throw out this as well. And I know it's people think that, well, why are you still thinking about Kawhi Leonard? You're being bitter. But you know what? He did say this on his way out to LA. He told Masai Ujiri, you know what? This roster is not good enough to win another championship. I want more players, better players. That is what he said to Masai Ujiri. So, yes, it was kind of a slap in the face when he did want to go home, which is understandable. But he did make that remark. So, yes, we're going to be bitter exes. But JJ, as you mentioned, Paul George, that's definitely questionable, but he does seem to shrink in big moments. We've seen that so far, he's been good, but we saw that last year in playoffs. And I think Pascal Siakam complements Kawhi Leonard's game a lot better than Paul George. Paul George, I don't think he's someone who can score as much without the ball. He needs the ball in his hands to be effective. Whereas Pascal, you can have him running to the rim, make cuts, do a lot of different things, get those putback dunks. Mostly Paul George is camping it out the 3-point. He needs to go ISO on players. So I think Pascal Siakam definitely complements Kawhi Leonard's game a lot better than Paul George. And just some of the pieces we had in Toronto were a lot better than what the Clippers have right now.
Yeah, I completely agree with like a lot of the points JJ made there. I think Siakam would have been a way better player. I've been open about this a lot, saying that Siakam is the perfect number two. When he was that number two and Kawhi attracted a lot of the attention, we saw that he was second All NBA. Like that's no little thing, you know? And obviously, the team around him was so perfectly constructed. They had the playmaking and Lowry and Van Vliet. They had the great driving and a second option in Pascal Siakam. They had the great defense in the middle with Marc Gasol and Serge Ibaka. Uh, I think a scout or an analyst recently came out and said like this Clippers team is showing how underrated the Raptors championship team was. Uh, as the Raptors team was way better constructed as the Clippers team, and a lot of people don't give that Raptors team the credit it deserves. As like, you know, Bleacher Report and other analysts said that the Raptors were the worst championship team, which is just blasphemous. That Raptors team was insane defense. I believe it's like up there pretty all time for a defensive run.
Number two, I believe, behind the 0405 Pistons.
Yeah, that doesn't get talked about enough. The road there, they beat the Magic after losing the first game. The Magic were like in the second half, one of the hottest teams in the league. Obviously, we still should have beat them anyway, but we did a reverse sweep there. And then we beat that 76ers team that had everything: Jimmy Butler, Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid. And then we got counted out by Stephen A against the Bucks when we go down 2-0. And then we win four straight. Then we beat Golden State. I know people bring up the injuries and all, but I feel like that was just an insane run. And yeah, that's all I'm gonna say.
And the other thing that I don't like about that too is so many people want to put an asterisk beside Toronto's title just because they didn't beat a fully healthy Golden State. First of all, injuries are part of the game. Every championship team needs to be lucky to a certain extent to win that championship. So to try and throw an asterisk beside that championship because, oh, they didn't play a healthy whatever, because they didn't play a healthy Warriors. Cool. The Warriors didn't play a healthy Houston Rockets team because Chris Paul got injured, and that team, for my money's worth, was better than the Golden State Warriors that year. So are we going to put an asterisk beside that championship? It's a stupid conversation. It's a part of the game, and frankly, just because they didn't beat a healthy Golden State Warrior team shouldn't discount a lot of the things that you're saying of how well constructed that team truly was. And I'm actually a little sad that when you were talking about the great playmaking, you didn't mention Marc Gasol in there, because I think Marc Gasol, yeah, he really was that piece that kind of really brought it all together, both in terms of the elite defense and the playmaking, because I think you do need to have some really good playmaking beside Kawhi to kind of offset his ISO heavy play style. And Marc Gasol was perfect in that regard. I see a lot of, I guess, revisionist history now with Raptors fans talking about, well, why did we give up JV, for Marc Gasol? And hey, don't get me wrong, I love JV, and I think he's incredibly underrated on that Grizzlies team right now. He is a fantastic player. But at the same time, Marc Gasol really was the final, I guess, nail in the coffin of what, maybe not nail in the coffin, cherry on top for what put that Raptors team over the top to make them a champion.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Before prop goes, just one thing I wanted to relate for Kawhi Leonard and why he succeeded so much with the Raptors and even the Spurs. Some things that those Raptors and Spurs teams had in common is insanely good defense and really great ball movement. Um, Whereas the Clippers have a lot of individual scorers, and I just think Kawhi, he's obviously still a great player, but he's not. You need to still build a perfect system around him in that style. So if you don't have that style, like the Clippers haven't provided, then I don't think you're going to succeed.
And just one last point before we end this discussion. We saw Kawhi Leonard limping pretty much after that 76ers series. His knee or whatever, his leg issues he was having. We saw that in the Milwaukee Bucks series where he wasn't, 100%. He mentioned that in the post finals interview when they won the championship. He was limping. He said, I don't have to limp anymore. And Kyle Lowry as well. We saw him wear that mitten as well. I don't know if it's his thumb. I forget what injury he had on one of his fingers. He was dealing with the whole injury issue as well. So I don't want to hear this injury issue. So as you mentioned, Warriors have been so lucky.
Didn't have OG.
And we didn't have OG.
That too.
Exactly. No one talks about that enough. So over to you, JJ. Let's head on to the next topic.
I'm absolutely here for that. But just as one last little point here, it is criminal that the NBA world never got to see how great of a defender OG Anunoby is on the biggest stage of basketball. Because let me tell you, the amount of NBA Twitter that just drives me insane because they don't fully appreciate how great of a defender OG is. Oh my goodness. I can't deal with it sometimes. Anyways, moving on to the next topic here. So obviously with the Raptors out of the playoffs, all of us in Raptors Nation have had to figure out who I guess we're throwing our allegiances to for the time being during these playoffs. So I'm going to kick it around and just see who's everybody supporting right now and why are you picking that team or those few teams in terms of wanting to see them win?
Without a question, this has to be the Dallas Mavericks, and you don't need any other reason than what we just mentioned. They're facing Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers, and I just don't like the Clippers in general, just because of their demeanor. You saw those bench players yelling after, Kristaps Porzingis fell down. We also saw Kawhi Leonard posterize someone, I forget who, and
Maxi Kleber.
there you go, thank you. And they're just screaming in his face. But what are you so proud of? You guys just blew a 3-1 lead last season. You're down 0-2 now. They have this mentality of just being really egoistic, full of themselves, despite not having accomplished anything. And Dallas is just a team you can't dislike. I mean, there's no egos there. You see how they play as a team. They play great. Obviously, there's Luka Doncic as well, but we saw this in last year's playoff run as well. They play so great as a team. Ball movement. And we saw that on full display on the fourth quarter when they tried to double team Luka Doncic. He just threw it over to Tim Hardaway Jr. and Tim Hardaway found Kristaps Porzingis open in the paint. So I love their ball movement. I love their team. I love their demeanor. There's not really a huge ego there. And they just play great basketball. It's just a lot of fun to watch. And Dallas will be the team I will be rooting for in the playoffs.
Yeah, I obviously really like Luka Doncic, but for this pick, I'm gonna go with the Denver Nuggets. This would have been a better pick if Jamal Murray was still healthy, as I love Jamal Murray. He's one of the best Canadian basketball players, next with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I just love watching Jokic and Murray's pick and roll. Got MPJ there. I just love the way that series against the Utah Jazz was honestly one of the most entertaining series I've ever seen. I'd honestly put the Utah Jazz in there too, just because of that. I love watching Murray versus Donovan Mitchell. I love watching Donovan Mitchell versus Jamal Murray go at each other. I just thought that was so entertaining. But and I also just love watching Jokic play. He's obviously the MVP this season, and his passing and everything is just so exciting to watch.
Screw Utah, bro. I'm sorry. That team is just overly cocky for my liking. In particular,
Denver Nuggets are cocky? Or
Utah? No.
Jazz?
Utah.
Okay.
Love the Nuggets. Love watching Jokic play. Screw the Jazz, bro. Cannot stand Rudy Gobert, who's admittedly, you're one of the best role players in the league, but you're still a role player. He's talking out here like he's a superstar. Like, bro, shut up. Just shut up, bro. Nobody wants to hear it, bro. Nobody wants to hear it from a guy that literally dunks in layups. Yes, you're one of the best defensive players in the league, but you also have one of the most limited offensive skill sets in the league, and you're out here talking like you're a top 10 player, top 5 players sometimes.
But Draymond does that as well, so it's not just Gobert.
Screw Draymond too. No, I'm kidding. Draymond I have more love for just because I don't know. It's a different way, I guess, of presentation. Whereas like Draymond's more just like an annoying pest, whereas like I guess Gobert comes off as more somebody that has a higher opinion of himself than he actually does. I don't know. It's weird. I'm not explaining that well. Anyways, let me get into my teams that I'm supporting. So I actually have a hierarchy here of like the 3 teams that I want to see win. And I know it's a little bit of a cop out, but if you had to make me choose one, I would absolutely say the Lakers. Listen, I know this isn't going to be a popular case in point. I know this isn't going to be a popular pick amongst Raptors fans, but listen, LeBron James is my favorite player of all time. Him and Steve Nash are like the 2 guys that really got me into watching basketball and made me love basketball. So you know what? Boo me if you want. I love LeBron. I want nothing but the best for him. For my money's worth, he's already the greatest player of all time. I want to see him add more and more to his legacy and really solidify that status. it's funny because outside of him, I don't actually really like the Lakers that much. I mean, I like Anthony Davis as well. Even KCP, I have a really odd soft spot for. Like, you know, that one role player that you just really like, but you can't quite explain why. For me, that's KCP for some reason. I can't place it. But if I had to pick somebody, it'd be the Lakers. But past that, funny enough, the team they're facing, the Suns, would probably be number 2 in my hierarchy, just for a couple of reasons. I mentioned Steve Nash, and I think I've mentioned it in these podcasts before. I have a real soft spot for the Suns ever since the Steve Nash days. And Chris Paul is another one of my all-time favorite players. I would love to see him get a ring. And frankly, I think you can make an argument that the Lakers and the Suns are the 2 best teams in the West. At least I would make that argument. And it really sucks that they have to go up against each other in the first round, but it is what it is. Whoever wins that series, I'm going to be happy. Past that, obviously, you guys already touched upon it, the Mavericks. I love Luka Doncic. He is probably like one of my 5 favorite players in the league right now. He is so entertaining to watch. And oh my goodness, do I enjoy just him staring at Patrick Beverley and seeing barbecue chicken every time that he gets that switch. My goodness, this man...
Too small.
Too fucking small.
Too small. My goodness. Like, I hate Pat Bev. I will never forgive Pat Bev for injuring Russell Westbrook and just being an all-around, asshole, I guess is the word. Sorry for any kids out there watching, but I don't set these videos to available for kids anyways, or whatever it is. So I don't care. Pat Bev is an asshole. I can't stand him. I don't think he's quite a dirty player, but I just think he's really fucking annoying. So I love just seeing Luka giving him the business. And the other thing that I love, because I will never get sick of saying it, I cannot believe that when Luka Doncic was coming into this league, people were questioning whether or not he was going to make it because he was coming from the second best pro league in the world, as opposed to the NCAA, in which he was the MVP of it as a teenager. And these guys, these draft experts, scouts, were really out here questioning whether or not Luka Doncic was going to make it in the NBA. Oh my goodness, how do some of these people get paid money to have that opinion? It blows my mind. I genuinely remember sitting there and being dumbfounded and being like, you're telling me you're questioning Luka as a pro because he didn't play in the NCAA, which is worse than the league that he's playing in now, that he's the MVP of? I swear, bro, some people don't have a rational bone in their body.
But JJ, to make a point there, I think it's more of just him not playing in NCAA. It's also because he was playing in Europe, and we know the history of a lot of European players coming over to the NBA and not translating. Not that I disagree with you. I totally agree. Luka Doncic was disrespected, but I think Dan was trying to make a point too. I don't know if he's making a similar point. To it.
I was gonna say, the funny thing is, like, you can search up on YouTube Ryan Hollins, who has like some really bad takes.
He actually nailed it.
Yeah, he actually nailed it. He said that Luka Doncic should be the best player in the draft.
Honestly,
but that's also go ahead.
Even a broken clock is right twice a day.
That's also because I read a comment online. I don't know how true it is, but they said apparently he played in the same league as Luka Doncic did. So maybe that's why he saw him firsthand and how good he was. So that could be one of the reasons why he actually got something right for once.
I just find it ridiculous that these guys were questioning whether or not a teenager had hit his peak as a pro, whether or not he was really going to improve that much. Like, come on, man. And the thing, to bring it back to what you were saying, Waraich, yeah, I guess going back a little bit further, there is a bit of a history of like European players not working out, but that is before the NBA revolutionized this game and revolutionized how they play basketball. The modern game of basketball is a lot closer to what the European style has always been, which is why I think it's so stupid to discount these European players now, because now they're playing very similar games. Beforehand, I think a lot of players didn't translate over, frankly, because there was such a contrast between how the NBA played and how Europe played. Not so much anymore.
I agree. I mean, as Raptors fans, we know this. We've had our fair share of, European experiments, and the biggest being Andrea Bargnani. So Anytime I even drop my latest video of, a European player, and automatically I had a few comments in there suggesting that, no, we're done with European players. But no, I mean, I agree with you, JJ. I think you see that with a lot of how the game is run today. And you see it in the NBA as well. I mean, like you see, before it was a lot of ISO game. Now it was more of a passing game. You see that with Nikola Jokic, and the Spurs are a great example of what, they've revolutionized the game of how it's played today. Team ball, just move the ball really well. And you're seeing it a lot more these days. So I have to agree with you. I think European ball isn't that much more different than how it's played in the NBA today.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Now, for this last part, we have our third debate, but our first one where everybody's fighting for somebody else. So we had a really interesting discussion. I think it was at the end of the last podcast after we were done filming, where we were just talking about some of the best teams to never win a title. And it honestly just felt like a really natural talking point for just a debate at the end of this one. And I think it's super interesting. So let's let everybody make their case. Waraich, what do you got?
All right. You know who I'm going to say, JJ. It's someone you really like growing up. So the Phoenix Suns, I think it was the 2006 Phoenix Suns. I loved watching that team grow up. And we've talked about how, NBA teams have, or how NBA has changed. And the Phoenix Suns were doing this in mid 2000s where they were playing team ball. And obviously Steve Nash was a huge part of that. And they just seemed to get everyone involved. And it was kind of like how we see with the Raptors, not necessarily deep in the bench, but they had, they could go 4 or 5 guys deep that could each score 20 points. They had a great system there with D'Antoni. Is for all the heat he gets. He did run the offense really well. Steve Nash, Amari Stoudemire, Boris Diaw. I'm forgetting Leandro Barbosa. There's another, Raja Bell was another actually really good. Sean Marion as well. Raja Bell was a really good role player back then. So they had a lot of different pieces that could score 15, 20 points on any given night. I really like that team. And unfortunately, it was with a lot of teams that ended up running into the Spurs and the Lakers in those 2000s
Or
where,
Bru-
you know what, it just,
or
if
Bruce
it weren't for
Bruce Bowen in this case specifically.
oh yeah, Bruce won, but they could have easily had at least a couple of championships. And obviously their defense was questionable. That's why they didn't ultimately, I believe, make the finals. But they did run into some all-time great teams and some all-time great players, which is why I believe the Suns did not win the championship.
Man, I just want to touch upon something quickly. Steve Nash has been the worst victim, in my opinion, of revisionist history in terms of, modern day fans that really never saw this guy play, questioning how good he really was, comparing him to some people and just being like, wow, look at his numbers. They're not that impressive. He was never really that good. Like he never should have had his MVPs, all this dumb talk. And I literally, every time I hear somebody say that, I'm just like, tell me you weren't watching basketball back then without telling me you weren't watching basketball back then. Like Steve Nash is one of the greatest point guards of all time. Especially in terms of his play style. And I believe you've even heard, I wouldn't remember when the exact quote was, but I do remember Steph Curry even talking about how Steve Nash's play style really paved the way for somebody like him. And then obviously as an extension, somebody like Trae Young today. I guarantee you, and I would bet any amount of money on this, Steve Nash's game.
Bet your house.
You bet my house. Bet
your house.
My credit card.
Bet it on Damian Lillard though. He'll come through.
Oh my God. You take Steve Nash from those teams, you take his play style, you take who he was, and you plug him into modern day basketball. That guy is averaging like 28 and 15. Like, oh my goodness, this, like, the play style today is just so suited for what he was doing. And you've even had Steve Nash talk about it in interviews before where he was just like, yeah, sometimes I held back with my scoring because I didn't really think that's what a point guard was. Like my defined role was this and that. And like in modern day basketball, I would say players just have such an incredible green light that just really wasn't available to guys 10 years ago. And like, you give that green light to Steve Nash and a lot of people would be talking about him different. And again, what really gets me about that situation too is I know it's like freaking 12-year-olds hiding behind like a Twitter AVI of like just a random player or whatever that have never watched this guy play or were literally in diapers when they were watching this guy play, but it still just drives me insane. Just stop slandering Steve Nash. He is so much better than most of you new NBA fans give him credit for. I know I sound like an old head saying that, but come on, man. Come on, man.
I totally agree. Dan, do you want to say anything before I jump into this?
No, I think like there's like a decent amount of players you can say like if they played in today's generation, their stats would have been uh more inflated. I'm trying to think of a player off the top of my head.
Gilbert Arenas.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, or you could say who's like a really great three-point shooter.
Ray
Like imagine
Allen.
how much
Reggie Miller.
Ray Allen.
or what if like Larry Bird played in like today's era?
Ooh, he'd be
He's like
killer.
averaging like he'd be
He'd
30
be absolutely
points.
killer.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. Like, damn, like a lot of like this 3-point era is just like I wonder how a lot of these like shooters who didn't really get that chance to shoot as many threes as in today's NBA. I wonder, obviously, the 3-point you get more points shooting them. I wonder, like,
that's quick maths.
I wonder, like, how much like points these guys like stats would go up.
I actually, for anybody watching this, and obviously for you guys, Jimmy Highroller, for those of you guys that know him on YouTube, he actually has a really interesting video about this. I would highly recommend it. I don't remember the title off the top of my head, but if I remember it and find it by the time this video is posted on my channel, I will put it in the description. It is actually a very interesting watch.
Yeah, and I mean, if we're talking about players with green light today, Dan, let's talk about Andrea Bargnani.
Bro, stop saying his name.
I still can't
Primo
believe
Pasta.
I can't believe who it was. The Indiana Pacers. I can't recall his name, but who was it? He played with the Warriors and Spurs too his last couple of seasons. He said Chris Bosh and Andrea Bargnani would absolutely kill it in today's NBA. I can't remember his name on the top of my head, but he played with the Pacers when Miami and Pacers went at it in those playoff runs in the early 2012-13 playoffs. They had those conference finals with Paul George.
I'm just gonna throw names at you.
Roy Hibbert,
George Hill, Danny Granger.
Not George Hill.
Was Monte Ellis on those teams or
not? Danny Granger. No, he was not. No, he was later. He was like 2017, I believe. But anyways, yeah, I'm sure someone in the comment section will let us know. He said Andrea Bargnani and Chris Bosh would absolutely go to work in today's NBA. But no, all jokes aside, I agree. You know what? A lot of NBA players have talked about that in the past, where, you know, if they were playing in today's NBA, it would have been totally different, and they would have gotten the green light, which they didn't have, you know, in previous, you know, decades. So absolutely, I'm with you guys about Steve Nash playing. Absolutely, he easily, as you've mentioned, he was scoring with a lot of efficiency as well. So imagine him in today's NBA, he would have been on fire.
He's easily one of the best shooters of all time that really just did not shoot that much. You give him like those 5 extra shots a game, most of them being threes. Mm-hmm. It's going to make a difference. All right, Dan, we've gone on this for too long. Give us your best team to never win a title.
Speaking of green light, let's talk about the Splash Bros 2015-16 73-9 Warriors. Like, all was missing, 73-9, nothing without a ring. I forgot who said that quote.
I think that was just a generic thing that went around the internet afterwards.
It was a meme, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like that team was like pretty loaded. Obviously, Steph Curry and his MVP self, Klay Thompson, Andre Iguodala, Harrison Barnes before he became like, he didn't really improve as much as I thought he was going to be, Harrison Barnes, but he was pretty solid on that team too. Andrew Bogut. Yeah, Sean Livingston, the mid-range god. Never missed a mid-range shot in his life. Honestly, and that defense was pretty good too. If it wasn't for obviously that heroic comeback by LeBron James, where LeBron stamped himself as the GOAT, everyone would be talking about that team for years to come.
Is that supposed to be LeBron James?
Absolutely. It's him in a Lakers jersey.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, it's still LeBron James.
I couldn't see it from far away until you brought it closer. The big forehead for sure.
And way more generous of a hairline than he deserves. But
absolutely.
And again, who am I to be taking shots at anybody's hairline? Man, I totally agree though, Dan. I mean, listen, realistically, people were ready to anoint that team as the greatest team of all time, and then they just didn't win the ring, and
Mhm.
it just destroyed that team's legacy. And it sucks because realistically, that team is very much so up there amongst the best teams of all time, not even just not to win a ring, but just the best teams of all time, period. And it just sucks that everything that people are going to remember them for is 3-1, and to an extent deservedly so, but that team deserves some props even if they did choke when it really mattered. Shout out to
Yeah.
LeBron and Kyrie. They were insane in that final series.
The only team to blow that lead in the finals. So it's pretty insane.
I will still never, and I mean never, forget LeBron James's expression. I believe it was after game 4 where Klay Thompson talked about LeBron getting his feelings hurt.
Feelings hurt.
Yeah.
and LeBron just said, Klay said what? And obviously the reporter repeated himself, and LeBron just sat there and just laughed.
He's like, I bet.
Yeah, he was literally just there, just and at that point when I heard that laugh, I was just like, oh boy.
What did you do?
It's like, you just poked the bear. You just poked the bear.
It seems like every time Klay Thompson opens his mouth, especially in the finals, it goes the other way. We saw that trash talk with Drake too, and I think they just lost
Yeah.
I think 2 games in a row in Golden State or something like that. So that was funny.
Mm.
It's funny because Clay seems like a fun guy,
Hey.
off the court.
Kawhi is a fun guy.
Well, okay. You see Clay with all the memes, China Clay and his dog that he loves so much, and then when it comes on the court, he's talking so much shit,
Oh man, I feel like Steph, I mean, I don't want to say Steph is talking shit, but I feel like Steph kind of carries himself in a similar way too, where off the court he just seems like one of the nicest people ever, but then on the court, I don't understand how nobody has picked a fight with Steph yet. Like, bro, if this man was hitting threes in my face and then turning around to shimmy right afterwards, bro, I'm throwing hands.
Some disrespectful shit.
Shout out to Steph though. I know I've thrown this around a lot this video, so it might lose a little bit of meaning, but also one of my favorite players of all time. Okay, so speaking of Steph, I guess this is a good segue to my team that I think is one of the best teams to never win a championship, and is just incredibly underrated when talking about this kind of stuff. The 2016-2017 Cavaliers. And there might be some recency bias in that, but they were historically one of the greatest offenses in playoff history, and a really bad defense, but we're not going to talk about that. They were historically one of the greatest offenses in NBA history. I actually pulled up the numbers, and the only teams that are currently ahead of them are teams that are in 2020, 2021, being this season, that have played 2 games and their numbers are skewed, or the 2019-2020 Jazz are the only other team that are ahead of them in terms of offensive rating for playoff history. And that team was knocked out in a round. So I feel comfortable also dismissing them. That I bring that up because my point here being is the Cavs that year probably had the greatest offense in playoff history, just period. LeBron and Kyrie were insane. Kevin Love, I had a more natural fit, I would say, in that offense, because obviously when people are talking about those Cavs teams, people always talk about how Kevin Love was not fitting in. He was fitting in that season, and they were just better than the team that won the championship. And I feel like for the most part, nobody talks about them because obviously Golden State went and built, for my money's worth, the greatest team of all time with the Kevin Durant super team in the first year. And it's okay, true, the Cavs are not going to beat that team. And for the most part, it sucks because, one of the greatest teams to never win a championship just happened to go against, again, for my money's worth, probably the greatest team of all time. And as a result, they are just kind of lost in the shuffle in terms of just all-time great teams.
So wait, JJ, did you just say they're one of the greatest teams not to win a championship, or they're better than the team that won the championship?
I didn't say they're better than the team that won the champ. Ooh, actually, that's really interesting. Honestly,
So you're saying they're better than You're saying they're better than Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson, Stephen Curry,
No,
that
no,
team,
no,
that
no,
late
no, no,
roster?
no, no,
Oh,
no, no, no. I
oh,
am not
you had me
saying that.
worried. I was like,
I am
wait, there.
I am saying the 2016-2017 Cavaliers are lost in the shuffle of all-time great teams because they went against the best team of all time. That's what I'm saying.
That makes more sense. I was gonna question. Wait, they're great, but they're not that. They're not better than that Warriors team. But no, I agree with you. You know what? They were a really solid team offensively. Unfortunately, I don't know whatever happened to Kyrie Irving after that finals, and he just decided to go MIA on the entire Cavs team. But I agree. You know what? I think they're one of the most talented teams. Now, obviously, I've mentioned this with my Phoenix Suns as well. Defense, unfortunately, wins championships. But I think if it wasn't for Kevin Durant being on that Warriors team, I definitely think they're taking that championship as well.
See, that team was one of the rare examples, though, of yeah, their defense was bad, but their offense was genuinely so electric that it did not matter. They were still torching you by like, I can't remember their exact point differential off the top of my head, and it would obviously be skewed by that final series, but they were torching teams, and I mean torching teams in terms of like the final margins of victory on their way to the finals. So that was one of those rare cases where I think, yeah, the defense was bad, but frankly, if they didn't run into that Warriors team in the finals, I really don't think it would have mattered.
Yeah, I think if Kevin Durant isn't added to that team, they probably repeat. I feel like that's not too bold to say. That team was so well constructed, I feel like, too. Obviously, you said that they lacked on the defensive end, but offensively, they're just like a juggernaut. They had like a lot of catch and shoot players, I believe, which is just perfect for LeBron's game. You have like another ISO player and Kyrie Irving. You have a really good third option in Kevin Love. And you said like Kevin Love fit the best on that team. So I feel like you had a lot of great pieces. Ty Lue is still kind of like just give the playbook to LeBron. So I wouldn't give that mastery to Ty Lue, but
Yeah, let's be honest. LeBron's the coach of that team. Like, you're seeing it with Ty Lue in the playoffs this year. I mean, with all due respect, I'm not going to slander a man that's very obviously a better coach than I would be in any regards, but like he's not that great of an NBA level coach. I think he rode the coattails of LeBron for a good
oh, for sure.
bit of his success, and I think you're seeing that really show up in this year's playoffs. But I mean, for the most part, like with these teams, like we've all brought up excellent examples, and I think it's really hard to even sit here and just comparatively go, yeah, my team's better than yours. I mean, obviously, low hanging fruit, but the 73-9 Warriors probably win this debate because let's be real, they're the 73-9 Warriors. I think that one's kind of a gimme, but at the same time, like these are all just genuinely fantastic teams that just didn't put that final stamp on what would have been an iconic season for them. A lot of other examples of teams that I could really think of, say off the top of my head, the 2015-2016 Thunder, the team that got 3-1 by the Golden State Warriors before the Warriors got 3-1, that is also an all-time team that just really didn't put it together in the end. They easily could have been remembered as one of the greatest teams of all time, or at least in the conversation. I think, hell, you look at some of the teams that Michael Jordan has obviously stopped, like I believe it was the 97-98 Jazz, if I'm not mistaken. That's a team you could easily make a case for. You could go up and down the list. Like you were talking about, obviously the Spurs stopped a lot of really great teams. Like Dirk Nowitzki easily could have way more championships than he does. And obviously Steve Nash in the same light, if it wasn't for the likes of Tim Duncan or hell, Kobe Bryant as well in the Western Conference. There's so many just fantastic teams out there that are just left without a title. And it really makes you wonder sometimes, you know?
Lastly, another team I guess I would say would be Lob City. Obviously, they never really made it that far. I think they didn't even make it past the second round. Typical Clippers. But yeah, you had like Chris Paul, Blake Griffin when he could actually really dunk. DeAndre Jordan. People say like, one of Chris Paul's greatest accomplishments is making DeAndre Jordan an all-star. But he was actually pretty good for those teams. And then JJ Redick was on fire too. Like I think I've seen on their podcast, JJ Redick, he said, if it wasn't for Golden State, they definitely should have at least went to the finals and at least competed for a championship, as they had pretty good chemistry. They just couldn't put it all together.
all that team was missing was just a really decent option at the small forward position. And they rotated through some really interesting choices. I think Matt Barnes probably would have been the best out of them. And that should really tell you all you need to know about that situation, where they had guys like an old Paul Pierce rolled through there. I think an old Danny Granger rolled through there. They just could never really figure out that small forward spot. And again, to the point that Matt Barnes was probably the best small forward they ever really had in that Lob City era. Unless I'm really forgetting somebody, but I don't think I am. Most of those names are just really, case in point, forgettable. So yeah, no, like I do hear you. I do think that's one of the teams up there as well. But for the most part, I feel like you can go around this cycle forever talking about these teams that like just barely missed out. But I do think we have nailed a lot of the really good ones, being say the 16-17 Thunder. I believe it was the 06-07 Suns, and obviously the 73-9 2015-2016 Warriors. I do think those are genuinely some of the best teams. I mean, best teams to really never get a championship. And again, shout out to, who was it? Robert Horry for that hip check on Steve Nash that just sabotaged the Suns that year. Man, you can't change my mind. If there was a year that the Suns were better than the Spurs, that was it. And Robert Horry, if for whatever reason you ever see this video, I hate your ass. The Suns would have absolutely dismantled the Cavaliers in the finals as well, and that would have been Steve Nash's ring. That was some bullshit. But with all that being said, folks, if you're still here this late in the video, thank you so much for watching. I find it amazing that you find us entertaining enough to still be here at this point, but I thank you all the same. Like I said at the beginning of the video, subscribe to each of the people here. These videos are going to be rotating through all of our channels, and I really don't think you're going to want to miss a thing. I love these chats. I really do. I think they're great, and I think they're honestly just a whole lot of fun to do every time. And for the most part, we've seen a really warm reception, and it has just been heartwarming to all of us. Believe me, not to expose us, but like we have a group chat where we talk about how much we love just seeing just some of just the positivity that we have on these, and just thank you. Thank you guys.
Yeah. Raptors Roundtable, the support and everything like that has just been like amazing. Seeing like goated trio,
Who was
like
that? I think that
comments
was
like that is awesome to see.
Who was that? It was either Paul or Liam, I think. That was one of those two guys. Shout out to the two of you. Every time I see you guys in a comment section, I'm always just like, oh, fuck yeah, these guys are back. Love those guys. But yeah, basically, this is a long-winded way of saying, if you're supporting us right now, we absolutely appreciate you. I know it's corny to say we love our fans and we love the people we interact with, but we really do, like genuinely.
You know, the video's running long with clutches.
Yeah.
Sunlight has gone down. So guys, we'll be ending the video off here. Thank you so much for watching. This is out. Peace out from the Waraich Report.
Clutch takes.
And JJ Buckets. Raptors Roundtable signing off.